Have you ever stepped into the woods at night and felt the air change, as if the trees themselves were holding their breath, waiting for you to make your next move? Woods can be beautiful in the daylight, sunlight pouring through the leaves, the sound of birds, the smell of pine and earth. But at night, the forest is different. It becomes alive in a way that isn't comforting. Every sound seems sharper, every shadow stretches further, and the silence between them feels full of secrets. Tonight, I want to tell you a story about a place locals call the Whispering Woods. They say if you walk too far in after sunset, the forest begins to speak. Some say it's just the wind. Some say it's your own mind playing tricks on you. But others believe the voices belong to the people who entered those woods and never came back. It was late autumn when I first heard about the woods. The trees were bare, their branches like skeletal fingers reaching toward the sky. I was visiting the small town on the edge of the forest, and every evening I'd notice how the locals locked their doors early, pulling curtains tight as if trying to shut out something more than the cold night air. Curious, I asked an older man at the diner why no one stayed out late. He looked at me, his eyes dark and serious, and simply said, "The woods don't like visitors after dark. You'll hear them before you see them. And if you hear your name, never answer." That warning stayed with me, echoing in my mind long after I left the diner. And of course, like many curious souls before me, I couldn't resist. One night, I set out with only a flashlight and a notebook, determined to see or hear what made the Whispering Woods so feared. The path was narrow, lined with tall pines that loomed like guardians, their trunks creaking in the night wind. The deeper I walked, the quieter everything became. No owls, no crickets, not even the sound of leaves crunching underfoot. It was as if the forest swallowed sound whole. My flashlight flickered against the bark, and for a moment I thought I saw words carved into one of the trunks. Letters, faint and jagged. But when I looked closer, they were gone. Then it began, a soft murmur, so faint I thought it was just the wind. But it wasn't like any wind I'd ever heard. It rose and fell like voices, dozens of them, whispering together. I froze, my breath clouding in the cold air, listening. The sound wasn't coming from one direction. It surrounded me, threading through the trees, weaving into the air itself. I couldn't make out the words at first, just the cadence, the rhythm of speech. And then, or clearer, I heard it, my name, whispered softly, almost tenderly, as if someone I knew was calling me from just ahead. Every instinct screamed at me to run, but my legs wouldn't move. I stood rooted to the spot, heart pounding, as the whispers grew louder. My name again. The sound of my name carried through the trees again, drifting in and out like smoke. It was soft, almost familiar, as though someone I trusted was waiting just beyond the next bend in the path. My flashlight beam shook in my hand as I aimed it toward the darkness. The trees seemed endless, their branches curling overhead, closing me in beneath a ceiling of shadows. I whispered to myself, trying to steady my breath. It's just the wind. just the wind. But deep down, I knew it wasn't. There was intention behind the sound, a rhythm too human to be nature. I forced myself to move forward, one step at a time, crunching through leaves and twigs that seemed far too loud in the silence. With each step, the whispers grew clearer. They weren't speaking in unison anymore. They overlapped, layered voices weaving around me, some low and gravelly, others high and breathless, as if the forest held dozens of unseen mouths. At one point, the whispers stopped all at once. The sudden silence pressed down on me, heavier than the voices had been. My ears rang, straining for the faintest sound. Then, from just behind me, I heard a single, drawn-out breath. I spun around, but the beam of my flashlight revealed nothing, only trees stretching endlessly into the black. I told myself I would turn back. That's what any sane person would do. But when I glanced behind me, the trail was gone. Where there had once been a narrow path leading out, there was now only a wall of trees, thick and tangled, as if the forest had swallowed the way back. Panic tightened in my chest. I turned in a circle, shining the light in every direction, but the path had vanished. The woods had shifted around me, reshaping themselves like a living labyrinth. I was trapped. That's when the whispers returned, closer now, right at the edge of hearing. I could make out fragments of words. Stay. Listen. Closer. They overlapped and tangled until it was impossible to tell where one voice ended and another began. Ahead of me, I noticed something strange, a faint glow, like moonlight spilling through the trees. Even though the canopy above was far too thick for the moon to reach, it pulsed softly, almost like a heartbeat, drawing me toward it. Against every instinct, I followed, because staying in one place felt more dangerous than moving. The forest floor sloped gently downward, leading me into a hollow. As I descended, the whispers grew louder, circling around me like a tide. My flashlight flickered, casting jittery shadows across the ground. For a moment, I thought I saw footprints ahead of me, bare feet, pressed into the damp earth, leading straight toward the glow. The hollow opened into a small clearing. In the center stood an enormous oak tree, its trunk twisted and gnarled, its roots spreading like claws across the ground. The glow was coming from the tree itself, faint veins of light running through its bark. Like embers, the whispers rose in volume, all voices converging as one, echoing inside my skull. I reached out, almost without realizing it, my fingers brushing the bark. The wood was warm to the touch, pulsing faintly beneath my skin, as though the tree itself had a heartbeat. The whispers shifted, softening, as if the forest was holding its breath, waiting for me to listen. And then I understood. The voices weren't just random. They were stories, fragments of memories trapped in the wood, voices of people who had walked these woods before me. Some spoke of love, others of sorrow, many of fear, and beneath it all, a warning, repeated over and over, barely audible. Do not answer when they call your name. My stomach turned cold, because I realized I already had. The moment I realized I had answered the forest, the air shifted. It wasn't just cold anymore. It was heavy, pressing against my chest, making every breath shallow and deliberate. The whispers had changed too. They no longer drifted gently through the trees. They pressed closer, circling me, as if I were standing in the center of a crowd I couldn't see. My flashlight flickered again, dimming to a weak glow. I shook it, desperate to keep it alive. But the light barely pushed back the darkness now. Shadows leaned in, stretching longer, bending unnaturally across the clearing. I felt watched, not by one presence, but by many. Leave, one voice hissed, sharp and raspy. Another, softer, overlapped it. Stay. With us, the voices contradicted one another, layering into a confusing symphony that made my head spin. I stumbled back from the glowing oak tree, my boot catching on one of its massive roots. I fell hard, my hand slapping against the earth, and that's when I felt it. Carvings etched into the ground, almost hidden by moss. I brushed the dirt away and revealed words cut deep into the soil. Don't listen. The letters were jagged, frantic, as though someone had scratched them in a desperate hurry. My heart pounded in my ears. Whoever had written this had been here before me, and they wanted to leave a warning. But it was already too late. I had listened. The forest seemed to sense my fear, feeding on it. The oak tree pulsed brighter, its faint glow lighting up the clearing like a lantern. For a brief second, I thought I saw faces within the bark itself. Eyes, mouths, twisted expressions, frozen mid-scream. They flickered in and out of existence, as if the tree was holding onto the last images of those who had stood where I now stood. The whispers swelled again, and this time they said my name in unison, louder, clearer. My pulse raced. I clapped my hands over my ears, but it didn't help. The voices weren't around me anymore. They were inside me, 1,000 overlapping thoughts pressed against my mind, all clamoring to be heard. Run, stay, help us, join us. I tried to focus on one voice, just one, but it was impossible. They blended into each other, pulling me in different directions. My body trembled, as though it no longer belonged to me. Desperate, I staggered away from the oak tree, pushing through the clearing toward the darker edge of the woods. The glow dimmed behind me, but the whispers followed, threading through the branches overhead, trickling down like falling water. My legs carried me faster, though every step felt like I was sinking deeper, as if the forest floor was pulling me down. The trees closed in tighter, their branches twisting together overhead until the sky disappeared completely. My flashlight died, leaving me in pure darkness. I fumbled blindly, my hands scraping against rough bark as I tried to find some kind of path. The whispers never stopped. They teased me, coaxed me, mocked me. Sometimes they sounded like people I knew. Friends, family, voices from my past, calling gently, almost lovingly. And then I heard it, clear, unmistakable, my mother's voice. She spoke my name with the same softness she used when waking me as a child. My chest tightened, my throat closing with emotion. Every instinct told me to respond, to reach out into the dark. But I remembered the warning carved into the soil. Don't listen. I forced my lips shut, trembling as the voice repeated my name again. Closer now, almost right behind my ear. My skin prickled as though icy breath brushed against my neck. Still, I didn't answer. I couldn't. The forest seemed displeased. The whispers grew sharper, more violent, like the hiss of wind tearing through broken glass. The ground beneath me shook faintly, and the trees groaned as if alive, their trunks bending in unnatural ways. I stumbled into a hollow between two massive roots, curling into myself as the noise surrounded me. And then, suddenly, it all stopped. The silence was so absolute It made my ears ring. The forest was still again, as though holding its breath. I waited in the dark, shivering, my heart pounding. I didn't know if I had resisted or if I had only fallen deeper into whatever the whispering woods wanted from me. I don't know how long I stayed crouched between those roots, listening to the silence press against me, my eyes strained against the dark, searching for even the faintest glimmer of light. But there was nothing. It felt as though the forest had swallowed the moon and the stars whole, leaving me in a world that existed outside of time. Then, as my heartbeat finally began to slow, I heard it again. Not the whispers this time, but a soft humming. It drifted through the trees like a lullaby, low and soothing, almost beautiful. It reminded me of the kind of song a mother might sing to a child. For a fleeting second, I felt comforted, safe. My eyelids grew heavy, and I nearly let myself drift into the sound. But then the melody cracked, just slightly, a note bent in a way no human voice could make, and another. The humming deepened into a rasp, still soft but unnatural, as though the forest was imitating something human without truly understanding it. I forced myself to stand, pushing away the trance that threatened to pull me under. The moment I moved, the humming stopped, the silence returned, and with it, a faint glow in the distance, just like the oak tree before. A soft, pulsing light seeped through the woods, inviting me to follow. I should have run the other way. Every instinct told me not to go near it. But the glow was the only thing breaking through the suffocating darkness. With no path to guide me, I had no choice but to move toward it. The trees grew denser as I walked, their trunks impossibly wide, their roots knotted together like veins under skin. The whispers returned, but quieter now, as though they were holding back, watching me, waiting to see what I would do next. My steps echoed unnaturally, louder than they should have been on soft earth, as though the forest itself was amplifying every movement. Finally, the glow opened into another clearing, and what I saw made my stomach twist. Dozens of figures stood among the trees, faint, transparent shapes, their outlines flickering like candle flames. They weren't solid, not fully, but I could see faces turned toward me. Some were blank, featureless shadows. Others had hollow eyes and mouths frozen in mid-scream. They didn't move, not at first. They just watched. The whispers swelled again, but now I understood them more clearly. They weren't random voices. They belonged to these figures, the lost wanderers of the forest. Their words overlapped, fragments of pleas, warnings, and cries for help. Don't answer. Don't stay. Run. Join us. Each phrase tangled with the others until it became a suffocating chorus. And then one figure stepped forward. Its form shifted until it looked almost human, almost familiar. My breath caught in my throat. The figure's face was clear now. So clear, I nearly called out. It looked exactly like someone I once knew, someone I had lost long ago. Come closer, it whispered. Though its lips didn't move, the voice was inside my head, warm and persuasive. For a moment, I wanted nothing more than to step forward, to reach out, to believe that this was real. But deep in my chest, something screamed at me to resist. I stumbled back, shaking my head. You're not real, I whispered aloud. The figure tilted its head, and its face began to blur, melting back into shadow. The others stirred then, shifting as though the forest itself had commanded them. They didn't walk, they floated, moving closer without sound, their eyes glowing faintly in the darkness. I could feel the air around me grow colder, sharper, each breath burning my lungs. The circle closed tighter, dozens of whispering mouths, dozens of unseen hands pulling me inward. My legs locked, heavy as stone. It felt impossible to move, and just when I thought the shadows would swallow me completely, the humming returned. This time, it wasn't a lullaby, it was a warning, low and vibrating through the trees, shaking the ground beneath my feet. The shadows froze, their whispers faltering, as though the forest itself had spoken louder than them. And for the first time that night, I realized the whispering woods weren't only filled with lost souls. There was something else here, something older, something that ruled over even the shadows. The forest fell silent again. But this silence was different. It wasn't empty. It was expectant. The humming had scattered the whispers, pushed back the shadows, but it hadn't disappeared. It resonated low in my bones, vibrating through the ground, reminding me that something older, deeper, lived here. I stood frozen in the clearing, surrounded by faint shapes that dared not move. Their eyes glowed dimly, their mouths still open in silent whispers, as though waiting for permission. The humming continued, steady, unyielding, almost protective. I realized then, the forest wasn't just a graveyard of lost voices. It was a guardian of them. The whispering woods didn't belong to the wanderers. It belonged to whatever was humming, whatever power lay beneath the roots and soil. And by answering when the voices called me, I had stepped across a line I couldn't easily return from. I clutched my useless flashlight in one hand, forcing myself to take a single step backward. The figures didn't follow. They hovered, restless, but restrained by something stronger than themselves. The path behind me, once vanished, seemed to form again, faint and narrow, weaving through the trees like a ribbon of escape. I didn't run. Not this time. I walked slowly, each step deliberate, keeping my eyes forward. The forest breathed around me, its whispers reduced to faint murmurs like the rustling of leaves. I knew if I looked back, if I gave them my attention again, I might not leave at all. So I kept walking, minutes or hours, I couldn't tell, passed before I saw the first familiar landmark. The jagged rock near the edge of the woods. Relief washed over me like warm sunlight. Though the night was still black and cold, I pushed forward until, at last, I stumbled out onto the empty road where it had all begun. Behind me, the trees loomed tall and quiet, their branches tangled in moonlight. No whispers followed, no shadows stretched. The forest had released me, or perhaps it had spared me. I don't know why I was allowed to leave. Maybe because I resisted long enough. Maybe because the humming, the presence, chose to let me go. But I know this: the whispering woods are alive, and if you ever find yourself there after dark, remember the only rule that matters. Don't answer when they call your name. And now, here you are, lying in your bed, listening to the storm. Maybe the world outside your window is dark. Maybe the trees sway softly in the night breeze. Maybe you think you hear something, just faintly, like a whisper curling through the silence. If you do, remember what I told you. Keep still. Don't reply. Let the sound drift past. Because some voices belong to the living, and others don't. As you close your eyes and let sleep pull you under, let the story settle in your mind like a shadow at the edge of the woods. Let it linger, soft and eerie, just enough to give you chills before you drift into dreams. And if you enjoyed this journey through the Whispering Woods, there are more stories waiting for you, more haunted places, more midnight tales, more whispers that blur the line between imagination and reality. Subscribe to this channel now and make sure you turn on the bell so you'll never miss the next chilling story. Every week, we walk into the unknown together, into haunted houses, abandoned roads, forgotten forests, where the night always has something new to tell. If this story gave you goosebumps, let me know in the comments. Tell me if you've ever felt like the woods were watching you, or if you've heard whispers in the dark. I read every reply, and your stories inspire me to keep exploring the eerie, the unexplained, the unseen. And don't stop here. The next story in this series is already waiting for you. Just click, and you'll find yourself on another path, another haunting tale to fall asleep to. Let the next voice carry you deeper into the night. So sleep well, if you can. And remember, when the woods whisper your name, don't answer.